Hey, my amazing artists. So let's level up our art. So, obviously, just looking at my sketch, I notice I have no color. It looks pretty boring. So, I'm going to show you some tips how to color really nicely. Now, I'm going to use Prismacolor, which is a special type of colored pencil. You will notice as I'm coloring my drawing here that it's very smooth. Okay, to begin, I'm going to lightly erase some of my pencil marks. Now, I don't want to erase them totally because I need to know where my drawing is and what it looks like. But because I'm going to use colored pencil, a little trick really I like to use is I erase some of the pencil marks so it's not as dark. That way, the pencil does not show through when I'm coloring. You can use that trick for any medium. If you are going to color with crayon, marker, colored pencil, any of that, you might want to try erasing your lines just a little bit so they're not so dark before you color. Alrighty, so I'm going to start by coloring, and I'm looking at my apple as I'm doing this because I can see the change in value on the apple. I can see where the shadows are, which are dark, and where the highlights are, where they are lighter and almost even white in some parts. So to start, I like to just very lightly outline my shape. And then as I'm coloring, I'm going to color in a direction that helps the shape look more 3D. So I'm really looking at my object and trying to copy what I see on my paper. Okay, now look at my hand. I'm going to color in kind of a curved motion. That's going to help create an illusion that the apple is three-dimensional. So very smooth and in big kind of arches, I am starting to color with my colored pencil. Now, also look where my hand is on my pencil. It is way far back, so I am starting to lay down just a light layer of color. Kind of my thinking as I'm doing this is I think start light until it's right. So I can always add more, but it's kind of hard to erase. So I always start really light and then I add more. Also, look at the direction that I am coloring. I'm not gonna just color all over and do whatever direction I want. I gotta stay consistent. This is nice coloring skills. It's really gonna make your art level up. I'm gonna fast forward here. This takes a while. I think my whole process took about 40 minutes. So you do not have to do all this in one sitting. Oh my goodness, no. Take a break, come back, work on it another day. This takes time. I want it to look really nice, so I'm going very slow and slowly just adding layers of color. And then you can see the parts that look darker on my apple, I'm going to make it look darker on my drawing, right? So I'm just pressing down harder to create a darker value there. Probably one of my favorite tricks I use to level up my art is I add layers of color. If I just kept this apple all red, it'd look kind of boring. So I'm going to use this color wheel to decide what colors to use. Since I'm using red, I'm going to use colors that are close to red. So like oranges, yellows. I might even try a little bit of purple there where the value's really dark. I'll see. I'm just going to kind of play with it and start slowly adding layers of color to make my artwork really level up. It's always a smart idea to plan what colors you want to use just to make sure you have a nice color scheme. All right, and again, I'm using that apple as a reference. I keep looking at it to know where to add my colors. So I'm going to make some curved lines here to help create the illusion that it's 3D. So check out what I'm doing. Adding little curved lines. That's really going to help create form for my shape. form is when we make our shapes look like they are 3D. The reason I'm using pink here is because pink is a brighter color. It's actually a tint of red, so it's a bright color. I want it to stand out. It's going to be more of my highlight of the apple. So you're going to see how the pink is really going to level up my apple. I didn't want just a regular red apple, so I'm making it a little more interesting and pop more with this pink color. Also, something that you could do this week is you could use realistic colors. Like I'm doing mostly realistic, but I'm adding my own twist to it. So I'm going to add and use some colors that are not really there. You can absolutely do this. That is totally up to you as the artist, what colors you want to use. I would just recommend kind of planning out where the color should go. So look what I'm doing with the yellow. I'm planning to have the yellow be in more than one spot. This is going to create some balance in my artwork. It's going to cause the viewer's eye to bounce around on the apple where the yellow is. So that's a good idea as you're working to choose where to place your colors. So I'm also going to use orange to do the same thing. It's going to make these areas pop. I'm putting it next to the yellow because orange and yellow look really good together. And yeah, so I'm just kind of layering some color. I'm going to just keep adding color and layering. You notice that I switch between the colors quite a bit. And here where that yellow is creating this little ring of a highlight. That's going to really make this look more 3D. Okay, and then I'm just gonna let the video kind of play here so you can see how I'm just slowly adding layers of different colors. I go back and forth and keep mixing them together. That's gonna create some smooth transitions as I go from one color to the next. You can see here that as I'm adding layers of the red, it's creating a darker value, right? That's exactly what I want to do. And then the pink is going to be a little bit lighter of a value. And what I love about Prismacolor is how well they blend together. So to make it really smooth and blended, I'm going to apply a little bit more pressure, and I'm using the light color over that red, and look how nicely they blend together. It's really starting to come together. And so I'm just continuing to add and layer colors on top of each other. I really do want this orange and yellow to be the highlight, the brighter part. You can see it on that apple sitting there. So I'm really just trying to copy what I see. That is the biggest piece of advice I can give you when doing observational drawing. Stop and look at your item. Don't get too fixated or focused on your drawing. You need to take your eyes to the item and keep looking at it. Those are your hints for where to lay the color and your value. Okay, here's maybe my favorite part of all. I'm gonna use this white to add a really bright highlight. This is going to make this area pop, like you can see on the apple sitting there, right? See those really bright parts? That's the highlight. So I'm using that white colored pencil and ooh, it is so smooth and it just makes these colors blend together. Oh my goodness, it's gorgeous. I love it. And if it's not like bright enough right away, well, just go over it with another layer of white. Okay, then it's time to do the stem. And here's another little trick that I have. I like to outline like that, and then I'm gonna color inside very lightly. Oh, sorry, my hair is in the way. Oh my gosh. Very, there you go. Very lightly. See that? That creates contrast. So where I have really dark value next to a lighter value, that's gonna make it look more 3D. And it creates some contrast, which just makes your art look more interesting. It's a great way to level it up. Another way to just make it look a little more interesting is instead of just using a dark red for my darkest value, I'm actually going to layer a little tiny bit of violet. Red and violet can look really nice when paired together. So this is going to just bring a different layer of color, some more interest, really bring it up to a next level. And then since the red and violet look so good together, I'm loving this combination, I'm actually going to make my shadow violet. So is a shadow really violet? No, but that's my choice. I want it to look just a little more interesting, so that's what I want to do. Okay, and then here I'm adding some details. When I add these little details, I'm just bringing my art up to a higher level. I'm paying attention, close attention to the little tiny parts of the apple. This is going to show my viewer that this detailed drawing looks really realistic. That's my goal here. So that's a great a piece of advice I give you. Try to go back and add detail after you've colored. Add it on top. It's going to make this really stand out. Also, it creates like this texture of the apple, right? It looks like it feels kind of like grainy or bumpy in little areas, and that's awesome. That just makes it look way more realistic. So I would try that this week. After you color, add some details or texture to just level up your art even more. Okay, artist, and now I'm going to start coloring in the shadow there. And look how I'm coloring. I'm actually making like little circles. I'm massaging my Prismacolor into the paper. That's gonna lay down a nice layer. Here, I don't want it to be as smooth. I'm actually going to create a little bit of a texture by putting the Prismacolor down in a circular motion. I'm gonna fast forward here just so you can see what it looks like when I finished. Ta-da! That's looking so much better, right? I kind of want to leave it a little bit grainy just so that it's different, right? When we use different textures in different parts of our art, that makes it more interesting. Okay, now I'm not gonna stop just there. If I don't add anything else, it looks like my apple is just floating in space. So I'm going to add a horizontal line in the back, and I'm choosing to use marker because it's a different medium. So it's going to actually create some contrast with the apple, and it's just going to make it a little more interesting. Then you can see that I'm planning what to do on the table. I wanted to do some sort of lines. I just think it'd be cool if I added some lines here. So a great way to level up your art is to create patterns, use lines, shapes to create just a different texture or different way of coloring. If I colored this all in Prismacolor, it might look a little boring. So I'm going to use just these lines on the table. It's going to look kind of cool. But did you see how I was planning it first? That's always a great idea. I would hate to have messed up big time and then had been kind of upset with what I did. All right, but check it out. I do actually make a big oopsie here. I don't really like the spacing of those lines. They look a little weird. So I'm going back and guess what? I'm just going to make it work. I'm adding random lines throughout. They are not perfectly spaced. It doesn't really matter. This is creating some variety in my art, and it's just making it look a little more interesting. Okay, to add more interest, in the background, I'm going to create some textures. So I'm putting this texture plate under my paper, then I will put crayon on top. Okay, before you ever just add something, I'm going to test my crayon. I like that color. Now I'm ready to use it. That's always a great idea to test out the color of the crayon or whatever medium you're using, because if that actually was like a green color, it might not look as good, but I like this shade of blue, so it's gonna work. All right, then just start rubbing. These are called texture rubbings. It creates what's called an implied texture, so it looks like it's bumpy in the background. Also, a little tip that I use is when I get to areas that are close and I don't want that crayon on it, I'm using my hand as a buffer. It's like creating a boundary. I cannot color past my hand. And also look at my paper. I keep rotating it around so that I can get in the little areas that I want to color. And this is what it looks like when it's finished. I am loving what it looks like so far. But what I need to do is I need to finish it. I think I should color the table. I could leave it like that. It actually doesn't look too bad. But I think I want to layer some crayon on top of that marker. It will look really cool, I think. So let's try it. So you just saw me test out the crayons. I like the colors, and now I'm using them. I am kind of doing a rubbing like I did before, but this time I'm just going in one direction. So I'm pulling it down. I'm using the side of the crayon, and I'm just pulling it down, down, down to add the crayon there. And it creates this really cool texture. You could absolutely try this. Maybe you haven't used crayons like this before. I think it just is really fun and it looks cool. So yeah, so I'm adding the purple, and then I want to add another layer of color. I'm gonna use this kind of magenta, which is like close to a pink or purple, and it's just gonna make it pop a little bit more. That's always a great idea, just to add those layers of colors to make your art look even more interesting and take it to the next level. Okay, artists, there's my finished piece. Like I said before, this did take me a long time. It took a lot of practice. This didn't just happen in one day. So as you're working, don't get frustrated. Just try your hardest. That's what matters the most. Try using any of these tips and see how they can really level up your art and make it look even more fabulous. Okay, I hope you have fun experimenting and trying these tips and tricks this week. As always, have fun, take chances, and stay curious.